In a rare and deeply emotional moment, legendary boxer Mike Tyson broke down in tears during a live television interview after receiving a heartfelt letter from Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. This unexpected exchange revealed a powerful connection and mutual admiration between two influential men from very different backgrounds. What was meant to be a routine interview quickly turned into an unforgettable, emotional experience that brought the entire studio to a standstill. Mike Tyson, the former heavyweight champion of the world, had appeared on a major American morning show to promote his new memoir and a forthcoming Netflix documentary. He seemed composed, slightly weary, but mentally sharp. As the interview began, the host smiled and said, "Mike, you've seen it all, but today, we have something you didn't see coming." Raising an eyebrow, Tyson replied, "What's that?" A producer handed the host an elegant cream-colored envelope adorned with gold lettering. "This letter arrived last night," the host explained. "From West Africa, from President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso." The studio fell silent. Tyson's expression tensed slightly. "He addressed it to you only. Ubud gave us permission to read it live. If you agree?" Tyson hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "Go ahead," he said. What followed wasn't just unexpected, it was profoundly moving. The words in that letter reached into a part of Tyson the public had rarely seen. Not the fierce athlete or entertainer, but the vulnerable young man hidden behind the fame. Across continents, a leader had spoken directly to that inner self. The host unfolded the letter and began to read. "Dear Mr. Tyson, my name is Ibrahim Traoré, president of the transition in Burkina Faso. I write not as a leader, but as someone who once had nothing watching you fight on a flickering television." In a crowded room, Tyson appeared stunned, his breathing uneven. "You weren't just a fighter. You were living proof that pain could fuel strength, that a boy from nowhere could face giants and defeat them." Tyson leaned in, visibly affected. The host continued, "When my country was struggling, I remembered your eyes in the ring, not your fist-sure eyes. I saw pain, fire, and the will to endure. That image has stayed with me as I try to lead my people with that same inner fire." The room remained utterly still. "Thank you, Mike Tyson, for teaching me to write, just as a fighter, but as a man." Tyson turned away, voice trembling. "Stop, just stop for a moment." Tears had already begun to form. He tried to smile, but something within him broke open. The world was about to witness a deeply personal truth. The host gently laid the letter on the table. Tyson's hands shook. The studio was so quiet you could hear the soft hum of the lights. Tyson lowered his gaze, attempting to hold back tears, but they came, slowly at first, then in waves. "He saw me," Tyson whispered. "Not the knockouts, not the fame, just me." He wiped his face, but the emotion kept pouring out. "I was 14, homeless, angry, I wanted to die. Back then, no one saw me. No one cared." The audience gasped. "I fought because it was the only way anyone ever looked at me." Then he looked into the camera, and now, to know that someone across the world saw me and became something a president. Tyson broke down completely. No camera cut away. No one dared speak in that moment. The man once feared in the ring became the most human presence in the room. And suddenly, it wasn't about boxing anymore. A game was changing, quietly and powerfully. The boy who once had no voice had now given strength to another leader forged through hardship. From suffering, a sense of purpose emerged. From violence, a sense of peace. And from a simple letter, the healing began. As the show cut to a commercial break, Mike Tyson sat silently, still dabbing tears from his eyes. The host leaned in gently and asked, "Would you like to keep going?" Mike nodded. "Yes, the world needs to hear this." When the cameras resumed, there was no script, no planned questions, only truth. "Ibrahim Traoré," Mike began, his voice thick with emotion. "We've never met, but I feel like I know you." He held the letter carefully, almost reverently. "I wasn't supposed to make it through my youth. I was a thief, a street fighter. I was locked up before I ever felt what love was." The audience leaned forward, listening closely. "But this man, this president, he saw strength in what I'd been through." He paused. "No one talks about the pain, the hunger, those nights when you pray you won't wake up, but this letter, it reminded me I wasn't alone." The studio, once bright with lights and laughter, had become a place of quiet reflection. One man's tears had become a message heard far beyond the walls of that room. The world was now listening. That same evening, thousands of miles away, President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in his modest office in Ouagadougou. The room was dim, the fan above him humming gently. His security detail waited outside, giving him space. He watched the interview live on dash screen. As Mike Tyson cried, Traoré looked down, wiping away a tear of his own. In French. He whispered softly. He truly felt it. Behind him, the walls weren't filled with images of powerful leaders, but of children learning in dusty classrooms. Of farmers, nurses, soldiers, his people. Among them was a small framed photo, a young Mike Tyson, shirtless, fists up, eyes fierce. But this wasn't about boxing. It was about something deeper, the spirit. Just a few steps away, his assistant entered with news. The UN just reached out. They saw the interview. They'd like to revisit discussions about your education reforms. Ibrahim nodded. Let them wait. Tonight, the world doesn't need politics. He turned back toward the screen. Tonight, it needs honesty. Back in New York, the interview had already gone viral. Within hours, it had reached millions. Clips of Mike Tyson tearfully reading Ibrahim Traoré's letter were everywhere. The internet, for once, was listening. It was played in schools, in refugee camps across Africa, and it was celebrated. But it wasn't the end of the story. Just past midnight, Mike's phone rang. It was an unknown number with an international code. He paused, then answered. Hello. A calm, deep voice spoke. Mr. Tyson, this is Ibrahim Traoré. There was a moment of silence. Mike's throat tightened. You're the man from the letter. Yes, Ibrahim replied. And you're the man who helped me survive when I was a boy with no shoes. They didn't speak like icons. They spoke like men who had endured. Thank you, Mike whispered. No, Traoré said. Thank you. You gave me the strength to stand when the world told me to fall. A pause. Mike, would you come to Burkina Faso? Mike blinked, surprised. For what? Not for a fight for hope. And right then, two men from different worlds, shaped by different struggles, found a connection through their pain. Something powerful had just begun. Mike Tyson didn't sleep that night. After speaking with Ibrahim Traoré, he sat staring at the letter, reading it again and again. It didn't use fancy language, just truth. One sentence kept echoing. When I was 13, I didn't fight with gloves, I fought with hunger. But had been Mike's life too. He remembered stealing food in Brooklyn, getting into fights, and landing in juvenile detention. Nobody believed in him except one trainer, just as Ibrahim had no one until he decided to believe in himself. Next morning, Mike's team walked into his dressing room. They had a packed schedule: brand meetings, training sessions, media appearances, but Mike tore it up. I'm flying to Burkina Faso. They stared, shocked. Mike, are you sure? He met their eyes with the same fire he once had in the ring. This isn't about boxing anymore. It's about the boy I wasn't, the boy he still is. 2 days later, Mike landed in Wag. No red carpets, no press, just dust, heat, and amazed faces. Barefoot children ran beside his car, shouting, Mike Tyson, Mike Tyson. But he wasn't there to be a star. President Traoré welcomed him at a humble government house. No media, no staged smiles, just a handshake that lingered. They didn't discuss politics. They talked about pain. Traoré took Mike to a rural school, crumbling walls, but full of laughter. One boy had a black eye from a street fight. Mike sat on the floor beside him. You fight? He asked. The boy nodded. Me too, Mike said, quietly, but the strongest punch is the one you don't throw. He let the boy hold his championship ring. The child's hands trembled. Then Traoré knelt beside them. In this country, he said, you are not your scars. You are your spirit, the boy cried. And so did Mike. That night, the president and the boxer sat on a rooftop, watching the soft lights of a calm Burkina Faso. Traoré handed Mike a box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written by children from across the country. They heard about the letter I sent you, he said. Now they're writing to you. Mike opened one. Dear Mike Tyson, you are a lion who made it through fire. Please don't forget us. Another read. My papa died protecting our village, but now I believe I can be strong too. Tears rolled down Mike's face as he held the letters close, like they were treasure. These mean more to me than any title I've ever won, he said. Trop gave a small nod. Now you understand, brother. It's pain, not fame, that truly connects us. The air was still, with only the soft sound of wind rustling through the paper. In that silence, a connection was made, not through power or politics, but between two wounded souls who had made it through. As Mike skimmed the final few letters, one caught his attention. It was written on torn notebook paper. Dear Mr. Tyson, my name is Maddie. I'm 11 years old. My dad was a soldier. He said watching your fights gave him courage. He passed away last year. Now I'm trying to be brave too. I heard you cried. That means even lions cry. So maybe it's okay if I cry too. Mike's hands trembled. He remembered being 11, watching his mother fade away and feeling like there was no place in the world for boys like him. He whispered to himself, even lions cry. President Trop looked at him, eyes filled with quiet understanding. That boy, me, lives nearby. Would you like to meet him? Mike didn't speak, he simply nodded. The next morning they drove for 2 hours down dusty roads. They passed goats, women balancing water jugs, and kids kicking around footballs made of plastic bags. When they arrived, Maddie ran out barefoot, his face glowing with wonder. He wasn't meeting a famous fighter, he was meeting someone broken, just like him. Maddie stopped, frozen in place. He clutched a photo of his father in uniform, worn and creased from being held close. Night after night, Mike knelt to meet his gaze. You're braver than I ever was, little man. Maddie blinked, tears in his eyes. But I cry, he said. Mike gave a gentle smile. So do I. Without hesitation, the boy stepped forward and hugged him, not the kind of hug meant for cameras, but the kind you give when you're afraid someone might leave again. Mike held him close, and then he broke. Tears fell freely, sobs shaking his entire body. No cameras captured it. The crew stood respectfully at a distance, but President Traoré stood nearby, hand over his chest, eyes glassy. It wasn't just a hug between a child and a legend. It was sorrow meeting sorrow, pain recognizing pain, and healing beginning in the quiet space between. Later, under a mango tree, Maddie asked in a soft voice, "Will you leave too?" Mike looked him in the eye. "I'll be back, I promise." And this time, he meant every word. 2 days later, Mike returned to America. A major network interview had already been set up. It was supposed to be a simple chat about boxing. The host joked, "You've been off the radar, McAfrica, huh? What were you doing? Starting a new fight club?" Mike laughed, then paused. "Actually, I was being healed by an 11-year-old boy." The room fell silent. He pulled out Maddie's letter. Reading aloud, his voice cracked. "Even lions cry." And right there, on live television, the most feared fighter in history broke down. The studio was still. No one knew how to react. The host's grin faded into quiet respect. "I've met kids who've lost everything," Mike said, "but they've got more heart than most champions I've ever known." He looked directly into the camera. "Ibrahim Traoré, thank you for showing me that true strength isn't in fists. It's in love." Not a single dry eye remained in the room. Around the world, millions watched, some crying, some smiling, but all of them felt something they hadn't in a long time: hope. The morning after the emotional broadcast, Mike's phone rang. It was early. The number wasn't familiar, but something told him to pick up. "Mike Tyson," a gentle voice asked, double quotes. "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso." There was a short pause. "I saw what you did. For me, you didn't just honor his father. You helped heal something in him and in yourself." Mike sat in silence, moved by the honesty in Traoré's voice. "I want to invite you back," Traoré continued, "but this time, not just for one child, for a whole nation. I want you to speak to our youth. Share your journey. Show them what it means to rise from nothing." Mike exhaled deeply, his voice faltering. "You don't know what that means to me, brother," Traoré replied gently. "I do." Right then, they made a plan. Within 48 hours, Mike was on a plane. This wasn't just about boxing anymore, it was about redemption. It was about turning pain into purpose. For the first time in decades, Mike Tyson wasn't fighting just for himself, he was fighting for hope. The school in Ouagadougou was packed. Hundreds of students in worn uniforms sat patiently on the dusty ground. Some held notebooks, others clutched old newspaper clippings of Tyson. Mike arrived without fanfare, no entourage, no stage lights. Just him, a chair, and a translator. He began to speak. His words were slow, but each one struck deep. "I used to think I was just a weapon. I didn't know I had a heart until I listened to a child." He told them about Maddie, about his mother's passing, about prison. He explained how he fought in the ring because it was the only place he didn't feel helpless. Tears welled in the eyes of boys who believed that real men didn't cry. Mike stood, stepped into the crowd, and pointed to a boy. You think no one sees you, but I do. You're strong, even when you feel broken," the boy cried. Then, another, and another. At the back, President Traoré quietly wiped a tear from his face. This wasn't just a speech, it was a quiet revolution of the heart. Later that night, Mike sat beside President Traoré under the stars. There were no cameras, no reporters, just two men with painful pasts and full hearts. "Why did you write that letter, Mr. President?" Mike asked. Traoré smiled gently. "Because I saw the boy behind the fighter, and I believed the world still needed him." Mike couldn't respond, his throat tightened. Then Traoré added, "You remind my people that strength isn't about fists. It's about getting up again and again after life knocks you down." Mike nodded. "That's all I ever tried to do." They didn't just shake hands, they clasped them like brothers, like survivors from opposite sides of the world. The next morning, photos of Mike's school visit spread quickly, but it wasn't about fame, it was something deeper. People across the globe were moved by footage of Mike hugging children, telling them they mattered, showing them that scars aren't something to hide, their proof of survival. Mike Tyson left Burkina Faso not only as a boxing legend, but as a healer, and the world now saw him differently too, not just as a leader, but as someone who listens with his heart. Back in New York, Mike returned to the studio where it all began. He'd been invited for a follow-up interview. The producers expected a cheerful conversation, maybe some polite remarks. What they got instead was silence. The lights dimmed. Mike looked older, calmer. His hands trembled a little. The host asked, "Mike, what changed you the most in Burkina Faso?" Mike looked into the camera and whispered, "A child and a president." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small drawing. It was from Mitha, young boy from the village. A simple picture, Mike holding the boy's hand, with Ibrahim Traoré behind them, both smiling. The studio fell silent. Mike tried to speak, his voice catching. "He doesn't want to fight anymore," he said softly. "He just wants to live." The room fell silent. The audience, usually buzzing with anticipation, held their breath. The host, known for his quick wit, was suddenly speechless. Mike's voice trembled. "That boy gave me peace," he said, "and Traoré, he gave me purpose." A single tear slid down his face. In that moment, The world didn't see a fighter or a legend. They saw a man finally beginning to heal. After the show, Mike sat alone in his dressing room. A staff member stepped in, holding a brown envelope. "It just arrived international mail," she said. Mike opened it slowly. Inside was another letter, this one from President Ibrahim Traoré. The handwriting was familiar. The message even more so. "My brother Mike, they call me a president. But truly, I am only a man who dares to dream. Dreams of peace. Dreams of healing. Your visit reminded us that pain doesn't mark the end. It's where healing begins. If we choose to feel it, not fight it. Burkina Faso thanks you. I thank you." And the boy now rests peacefully. Mike stared at the letter. For the first time in years, he whispered a quiet prayer, not for himself, but for every child hurting in silence, and for every leader brave enough to lead with heart. He held the letter to his chest. "I was never the baddest man on the planet," he said softly. "I was just a kid waiting for someone to hear me. And finally, someone had. That took just 1 week to turn pain into purpose." Mike Tyson stood on a balcony in Harlem, watching a few kids sparring below. He wasn't their coach, just a steady presence. When one boy stumbled, Mike didn't laugh. He walked over, helped him up, and said, "Every fall teaches you how to rise." His phone buzzed. A message from Burkina Faso. In the photo, me stood proudly beside a new boxing gym. The sign read, "Tyson Hope Center. Sponsored by the government of Burkina Faso, endorsed by President Traoré himself." Mike closed his eyes. Once labeled a monster, he was now shone by a boy half a world away as a mentor. And that was enough. The end, but your emotions matter. If this story touched you, even in a small way, show some love by hitting like. Subscribe for more true stories. Heal. Drop a comment below. What moment moved you the most? Let's fill this space with compassion, strength, and second chances. Because even the strongest fighters need someone who believes in them. Until the next story, stay human, stay kind.